Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Ramp. Today we are super excited. We have Nick Peters with us. He's the COO over at Ardoq. Nick has been part of Ardoq for several years, so it's going to be super exciting to understand more about the scaling journey with Ardoq, the growth journey, one of those really, really cool companies from the Nordics to follow. So welcome to The Ramp, Nick.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invite. I just love the chance to get to talk about the history of Ardoq.
Cool. So let's jump straight to it. So Ardoq, what is Ardoq? If you give me the elevator pitch to start with.
Yeah, so we're a software. We sell it to big businesses around the world. We have customers like Exxon in the United States. I always forget exactly who I can mention, but I remember I can mention them. And basically what happens is that in any big business, executives really want to understand what exactly is happening everywhere in the business with my processes, my IT systems, what are people focused on right now? And to get that up to like an executive level is extremely difficult. And you basically have the history of it is that a lot of consultants or very deep experts try to spend a lot of time kind of drawing, here's how it works. So what we do at Ardoq is that to get that insight to make a decision about how to make a change, instead of hiring a lot of experts to draw it manually, what you want to do is to take the data you already have, automatically create those visualizations, knowing that you can actually make a decision on this data, and it's very complete, and you can get insights from every process owner, every system owner. So all in all, what that is called is enterprise architecture, and that's not it's not an industry it's not like banking and everybody kind of gets it. But it's a niche in the IT industry that is growing very quickly. And we've definitely kind of helped shape our vision of making sure that it's very democratized, that you don't just have like 10 people in a 10,000 person company who can see this information, but gathering it from everywhere. And then we're also able to kind of be the fastest growing software in that space. So that's why we're able to raise, big money, big investments. We've gotten through our Series D, and we're at the stage now where it's all about execution. So that's the fun part.
Nice. What is the typical alternative of Ardoq? Is it, you mentioned consultants? Is it any specific software, or is it like, as with all tech companies, like Excel could do the work, but you don't want Excel? Or what do you typically meet as a substitute or alternative?
Yeah, so a lot of the times it is, I think Visio and Excel is kind of like the very baseline. If you want to try to take data and turn it into a graph, that's how people do it. Very time consuming, and then nobody ever really trusts where it came from because it's kind of hard to see the audit trail. But then if you've already committed to doing an enterprise architecture practice in your business, then we'll see some competitors that started 30, 40 years ago that definitely kind of like a Windows 98 vibe to it. So us being native cloud in the browser, really smart, modern technology behind it. That's what the differentiator is for us. And so, yes, we will replace some of those old companies.
Let's get maybe into the Ardoq journey from when you joined the company until now, just understanding your journey and also the company's journey, and maybe also a bit on the numbers and the size of the business and the setup.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined in 2018 as employee number 20. And I joined, coming from, I'd done startups. It's my third time on the startup run. And I had always kind of been in really small, tight teams of like 5. So to join a company of 20, I was like, oh, all the hard stuff is done. Now we just gotta execute. But from when I joined at 20 to now us being about 250 people across the world, you see every single step of the maturation journey. There's always the next kind of really hard scaling journey to solve. And you really can't just rest on, all right, the success that you've had. So we've probably in software as a service, our big metric is annual recurring revenue. It's the subscription model. So it's really easy for to kind of understand the financial model of it. And so we've grown that about 30 times since I've joined. And at the same time, only growing the team, 10, 12 times. So it's getting more efficient, and we're able to really grow into the world. So now over half of our new business comes from North America, which is, as an American myself, I'm always impressed that it's a not simple journey to go from Europe to the United States and actually kind of consistently have an impact in a predictable way, so that when you go out and raise more money, it's obvious that, yes, that's the thing to continue to invest in.
Oh, it's extremely impressive. And when you decided to go for that internationalization journey, which is not uncommon being a SaaS company, but what was that sort of go-to-market strategy? I think, like you mentioned, the US seems like a big market for you guys. So how do you set that up? Is it through partners? How do you get it distributed out there? Or is it boots on the ground, local hires, bring people from HQ? Tell us a bit about that sort of decision-making process and where you are today.
Yeah, it's one of those hindsight things where, okay, we made it. And so it's like, interesting, how did we make it? But in the moment, it's a lot of uncertainty. And you know that you have all these options. And you know that you don't have kind of like endless capital to try to figure out 2 or 3 times. So you're really concerned about getting it right the first time. So what we did back in 2018, and we were mostly Norwegian, the first thing we did was to say, okay, let's just go to a near geography. So let's go to Denmark. And the assumption kind of from the Norwegian viewpoint is that closeness means similar market dynamics, and that we can kind of do what we did in Norway and replicate it in Denmark. That is not true, even with just that close of a geography. So, learning with just a couple people on the ground, Danish nationals, understanding kind of the business climate in Denmark, and doing that constant feedback loop to, the customers who are having success in Norway, our products, roadmap, what are we actually going to build next? And then actually getting some of those first traction in a new geography. It never goes as fast as you'd hope, and the feedback loops are always longer. So in that first step, and before kind of this era of super easy employer of records where you have, remote.com and Deal and stuff like that, we actually set up our own legal entity in Denmark, made sure that we were doing everything really, really consistent and proving that we have a local presence, which in hindsight, maybe you don't need to do that as a first step. Maybe you could have proved out the market a little bit more before having that additional administration. And then, again, with time zones, and let's kind of go to a bigger market where we want to build an English tool. So let's just go to the biggest English market there is in Europe. So that's the United Kingdom. And so that was kind of the next step, where again, we did the same kind of process, creating an entity and getting started with our own people.
But did you do it in sequence in a way? Was it like you did the gate stage model, we succeeded in Denmark, then we went for UK? Or was it sort of, we have enough cash to run the risk, let's test the market in Denmark and then quickly move to UK?
Yeah, I mean, you start to see from like the top of the funnel of the marketing that we are getting interest from these geographies. You kind of go out to the network of, what's possible to do there. You start to get some kind of first consultants who are helping you go the way. So between Denmark and the UK, I think there's probably like a 6-month lag between the two of them. So a pretty quick follow-up, because the core issue was, can we serve? And in the same geography, we can serve. So that, or same time zone, we can serve. And then the bigger decision then was to go to the United States. And that was about a year later, where there are so many stories of people failing at that very moment. But the reason why is because after you kind of learn, okay, Denmark is a little bit better than Norway and the UK is bigger, you actually look at the numbers in North America and you're like, this is an order of magnitude bigger. And if it's scary and you don't know exactly how to translate to that market, but if you don't get started now, you're never going to find the iteration path forward. So what I've kind of seen is that going to the biggest market where the natural kind of ICP is, the ideal customer profile for your business, it's scary, but to do it early enough in the journey to make sure that that's the learnings that you take away from it. So, we were lucky where we didn't have to bootstrap like a lot of other Norwegian companies do, where you have a lot of consulting revenue and then you try to do the SaaS revenue. We went pure for SaaS, a lot of learnings. And then we're going to go to the United States. Excellent. Let's make sure we move over some people who've helped build it in Norway and Denmark and the UK to the United States, and adjusting then for what is the difference in the climate there. But in that journey, every single step, we did it a bit of the hard way on administration, where we created a local entity.
A Delaware setup, or?
In a Delaware setup, yes.
Yeah.
Since then, we have people in about a dozen different countries, and we use employee of records.
Oh, interesting. So you went for legal entities in Denmark, UK, and the US. Have you kept all of those entities, or?
Yeah, so it's not just for employees, but it is also a bit about when you do not have a lot of revenue or a lot of brand recognition in a market. Sometimes in those procurement processes, just making sure you have the local company postfix on your company name helps. So it showed our willingness to really commit to the market, which I think helped us get some of those early deals. And then some, just from a legal perspective, a lot of times for liability reasons, they like to contract with the local entity, because nobody quite knows that much about Norway, but we know that it's a super solid legal foundation, but it's not obvious to the rest of the world.
No, makes sense. We like to believe it is, but it isn't. No, but it's a good point. And for US, take us maybe a bit more in details under the hood there. So you went to moved over some resources from HQ. Where did you set up office? What was the rationale behind that? The local people you got on board, was that sort of senior executives or more sales reps? What was the setup?
So we started the plan with, let's use the investor visa process for the United States, where you go through the State Department instead of the Department of Homeland Security. I don't know, Americans would know that there's kind of a big difference in reputation between those two. State Department really eager to do international commerce, and Homeland Security very strict. So doing that paperwork, sending Norwegian citizens to the United States, the ones who really have that good entrepreneurial commercial culture mindset, because there's not much process and there's not much proof points. And then trying to go and find, starting at the top of the funnel from a sales perspective, who is going to be eager to go and tell our story on the first call? How are we going to make sure that they're ready and believing that we can meet their business goals, getting those first deals closed? So we definitely started with strong culture carriers, commercial minds from the Norwegian entity, going to the United States, hiring on the top of the funnel of the sales process, so that at the very least, what we're proving is that we know how many failure points we have. We know what the reaction is, instead of starting with theory and going everywhere. We decided to land in Manhattan and New York City because one of the key things was Norwegian executive presence, flying quickly to the United States instead of doing like a big family move. So we optimized for easy flights. And then even though it's a very high cost of living and pretty intense job markets and all that kind of stuff, but in that trade-off, we definitely able to prove that we could get started. But one of the theories we had, which didn't come to true, was that being near a lot of big companies are headquartered within 30 miles of Manhattan. It's not like you can knock on doors and actually go meet those people. So that didn't work out. We still were Zooming everyone across the country.
Okay. So when was this? Was it during COVID, your setup, and how? Yeah.
So we did this in 2019, then with a lot of focus to kind of press through. And then we had to bring home those two Norwegians that we sent over as soon as they were going to close JFK Airport pretty much. And so we got them on the last flight out. And then as the rest of the world was, what can you know about a local geography when you're not in it? And so to be forced to learn it both ways, to be like, what happens when we're there? And then what happens when no one is there? We were really able to kind of see that the importance of being there, working through all the nuances of how kind of every little decision is a little brick that turns into a wall that can be sturdy enough to like support the business, or it's not. So it was difficult to get through COVID everywhere, but we did have enough of a strong cultural, stance there that we survived through it, proving what we needed to prove, so that when we got to our really big funding round in March 2022, we closed it at $125 million. Total investment amount is kind of like one of those incredible, never been done before kind of Norwegian moments. Investors invest that much because the biggest market in the world is paying attention to you. It's not because Norway was going great or the UK was going great. It was because the US had the correct proof points.
Did you ever sort of doubt that rollout in the US when COVID hit? You hadn't sort of fully gotten up to speed, and you lose momentum and you don't know where the economy is moving. So like now it's a fairy tale story. It's like fantastic to hear, but when you were sitting there, the world shut down. Take us through your head at that point in time and your concerns as the COO.
It is constant doubt. And that's the name of the game, and that's kind of the fun thing about scale ups, is that, you're always pushing the envelope. So you get pretty comfortable with being on the edge, which, the big companies don't, there's not a culture for it. Right. So if, let's take it easy. We don't quite know a lot. So let's just pull back. But we definitely took the approach that, no, we have to continue to have this activity in the United States, find the proof points that really matter to us, and have those moments of just complete, like, let's buckle down. So that's happened, several times in the history of Ardoq, which the grit that it takes to do this when you're met with uncertainty and no one quite knows the outcome. But as long as you're learning in the market, and you're, really tight on your financial runway, you got to keep pushing.
And the commercial aspect of this, or the sales processes, did you build the same sales process in Norway as you had in the US, or vice versa, or how did you adjust commercially for the rollout?
Yeah, so one of the key ideas is that you want to have very common systems, but allow for different processes in those systems. Because what you want to kind of try to find out is which geography are we getting most traction for? Because no matter what you do, you're going to have some geographies growing faster than others, for different reasons at different times. And so you always want to be super clear on the why behind the results that you hit. So in the United States, yes, we had to change our marketing pitch, who exactly that we're trying to pitch to. Enterprise architecture as a concept is less obvious in the United States, or less historically accepted than in Europe. We have to be very aware of the different kind of mentality towards the legal frameworks and the procurement, and how much effort it really takes to do a security review. There's 1,000 things to get a sale done that you do have to tweak towards the geography. The core thing that we always believed in was it's kind of helpful to see how whatever experiment you're running in one geography, you can measure the exact same total sum, which is how many deals did you have at the top of the funnel, how many did you actually convert, and then what was the cost of that conversion, so you can put the right resources towards the right things. So when you see the United States, sales cycles are a little bit shorter. If you really get a good champion, you can actually kind of get through the procurement process. Europe, a little bit more procurement by committee, and then some really charismatic people with a lot of veto power. You have to navigate that differently with the different sales processes, and also look for different skills in the sales team. the post-sales team, and basically making sure that you have the right skill sets around the table for that geography.
And speaking on the right skills, so from a recruitment point of view, how prepared were you for those, I don't know, different candidate markets, both in Denmark, UK, US? How did you set up recruitment? How did you ensure that you had those entrepreneurial profiles and seniority wise? How did you go about that?
So in the beginning, in all things scale up, if you don't have the data, you really have to go with your gut. If you don't have process, you have to go with your gut. So that's kind of those initial hires that you make, the connection to the founders or, the first sales leaders is really important, because you're really taking quite a career risk to make this move. So it's pretty easy to kind of, to check that the motivation is there, because the salary isn't awesome. The comfort isn't very awesome. So you can really find the grit pretty easily, just because we don't have much to offer. As you continue to scale and you start to actually competing with other companies for the right kind of talent, who do want to have, different things in their career, that's when we really had to level up on our recruitment processes, being really tight on what the local markets are like, how to pitch differently, how to make sure that people could really see the direct correlation between joining Ardoq and their career getting better and better. And so, when I joined in those first processes, I was pretty much alone handling like operational things. And then now, as we continue to scale, we have a full finance team and a full HR team and recruitment team and security team. So if you're in that, let's go to the first geography kind of a thing, know that you're going to have to overemphasize the network that you have and the gut you get from them. Maybe you're not going to get as many potentials in the candidates, but hopefully somebody who can take you through those first proof points. But if you can piggyback on someone else's network, so either through your investor network or through recruiters, you can see more proof points that grit is there.
And I assumed you've made some bad hires also along the way. So what are those learnings, especially for in a new market in a way? Because what I'm seeing working with founders and them hiring in new markets is that they're lacking benchmark, right? So if you're hiring the first sales rep, how do you know if that person is performing well or if they're not performing well, when you don't know about the market acceptance and you don't have the full benchmark of conversions in that market? So was your strategy to hire two at the same time to compare, or take us through some situations where you spotted underperformance and how you went about mitigating that risk?
Yeah, I think that there's when there is no sales track record, no matter who's doing it, but there's no sales track record in a geography, it's really hard to hold someone accountable towards something, because you're basically saying, please, with all of your might, try. And we're going to measure if the trying works or not. And so, yes, we would, from the top of the funnel, the roles that are just trying to make sure that we have some interested leads to talk to, we would hire in groups. And so we'd say, let's get 3 or 4 people together. It's a hard job. There's not a lot of proof points that we know how to measure, but we can see the differences between the 3 or 4. And then when there's also just a really strong desire to, no matter who is really doing the work, you really want to perform. You want to make sure that you get enough sales in that quarter. And so in the early days, it's kind of like just a team success, but it's hard to pick out which individuals have the most impact. So as you kind of get to more consistency, we would see some hires that we made that looked like really promising in the beginning, but we're kind of coasting on the teamwork instead of what they could do themselves. And so, yeah, that's when we have to make a change. The knowing how to benchmark what good looks like, we would talk to anybody who would talk to us, who had been close to a software process in the United States. Where should we put the bar know that somebody's doing well, and then just making sure that we had enough feedback loops to see if we could prove out the path to predictable revenue in the geography.
Yeah. And from administration point of view or legal point of view, underperformance, how did you address that in new markets? Let's say you had underperformance in Denmark and UK. Was it local legal partners? Did you have a good legal setup internally? Obviously, Norway is quite strict with labor laws, so maybe you're coming from a very more like labor protective country, so maybe it's more difficult here than elsewhere. But take us a bit maybe through those without going into details. I fully understand that you can't serve.
Well, in the beginning, we really took the approach that there is something good about the Norwegian system. And so without knowing all the little levers you can pull in each geography, we just kind of took, well, let's just take the Norwegian way towards this. It was a little bit easier for, most managers were in Norway at the time. And so it was a lot of, let's do those development dialogues. Let's, talk about different ways that we can support to improve. Instead of doing like in the United States, just the at-will employment means that you can just be gone for no reason on the day.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do that kind of way of doing it because we know that we're definitely, we're not some big company who has a lot of experience with this and can ride on their brand. We really want to show that we're giving everybody that we bring in that shows the right skill sets this chance to really prove themselves, and we give them enough time to do that. And so, no, we didn't have really tight legal partners in the different geography to try to like maximize how we did this. And then I think over time, as you start to see that, there are some protections towards the employers because employees can start. It happens that they take advantage. So you learn and you mature a little bit, and then how we just want to make sure at each place that we really talk through the culture and the values that we have first, and knowing that we have a solid legal foundation in case that doesn't work.
Yeah, like that you've taken that sort of Nordic or Norwegian approach to it. It seems the right, or maybe the right approach, or the human approach to how to lead people. And now we talked a bit about underperformance and consequence and whatnot. And it seems like you've succeeded with creating a good performance environment, whereas the company is succeeding. So there's something there with the culture that you've nailed, and something with getting the right people on board and also going in the right direction. So tell us a little bit more about how much you thought that through in a way. How do you work preventive to make sure you kept the culture and the drive? I think that's sort of important, and also like which measures did you take to build the culture you have today?
It really starts with the co-founders. So our CEO co-founder really takes the approach of, this is a team. This is an elite team. This is not kind of the family, metaphor for a company.
The Netflix approach.
It's a team, and we really want to bring in people who are adding something new to that team and are able to help other people grow. And you really believe that growth happens with people. And then that kind of sets the foundation for you can't just kind of say you're going to do something. You actually have to do it. And so I think that's been a big part of our culture from the very beginning, so that we didn't kind of over embrace people to be like, you're one of us forever. It's just more like, here's the expectation. We know it's going to take you 6 months to get it on your feet at all. So here's all the resources you need to do that. And then after that point, then it's like, do you see how you're impacting these big company goals that we want to do? And then we also have never kind of gotten to this entitlement culture where whatever you can compare us to other Norwegian startups or other SaaS companies who are kind of coming up in the same time. Sure, a lot of them have grown faster than us, but not very many in Norway. We have never been satisfied. we are always concerned about how are we not competing enough versus the companies outside of Norway? How are we not, you make some mistakes and you wish that you didn't. Always that concern about what are we missing? Because we don't want to just kind of stop at big enough. We think that the value we're bringing to our customers is so important that we want to get as big as possible to serve these customer needs at a global scale. And independence is actually a virtue. When the last big wave of IT definitely got sucked up by a few big players. And the next one, is that what's going to happen the next time? Or do you need to have some independent players to kind of keep up the competition and show that there's different ways to make sure that companies are improving their efficiency and meeting their goals?
It seems great to be at Ardoq with that type of hungry culture, and it's very much needed if you're building a global company and shooting for the moon or the stars or whatnot. You mentioned that the CEO plays a big part, like building that sort of story, leading by example. But in the day-to-day, the majority of the team will interact with their manager, and their colleagues. So how do you ensure that mid-management understands this and adopts the same way of working and sets the right expectation, understands where the hiring bar is and what's okay and not okay in that hungry culture that you're building? So just curious, because I've seen so many companies that are struggling to do this and they get complacent, and at scale, like talent density drops. So super interested to learn more about your thoughts there.
It's constantly evolving. And I think that a lot of the times, because I'm so focused on, what can Ardoq do better? I don't always lift my head and see what else is happening in the world until we get in kind of these new joiners and they say, wow, I've never really experienced a company like this, or how did this kind of happen? And I think a lot of it comes down to remembering that we're just people, and most people have these same basic needs, and we want to create meaningful work. So it's not about being super comfortable and happy. Like, that's what life is for. Meaningful work is about saying, I'm going to do this side by side with these people around me. I know what's expected of me, and I can kind of continue to push my boundaries for what excelling looks like. And so we have a lot of employees comparatively. I mean, we're a 10, 11-year-old company. The number of people we have who are 6 to 11 years is kind of really high. So we definitely have these people who have been through each stage of the maturing and are just culture carriers. They see it, and they know that bureaucracy can creep in, and they want to talk about it, and they don't want to allow it to kind of turn into the kind of job that they don't want to be involved in. And then what I do in my role a lot is to say, all right, well, there's a culture here and there's a desire. How do we get that into a scalable process? So early on, I was very, at 20 people, I implemented an HR system. I made sure that we did engagement surveys, both monthly pulses and bi-yearly deep engagement, so we can see this whole history from 2018 of how do people feel about working at Ardoq on all these different elements. And then have a really structured development dialogue process where you're trying to match, you're really good at your role, you're ready for the next kind of growth thing, and you really have to do it with peers. There's no kind of, there's no unicorn superstars at Ardoq. It really has to be together. So step by step, I feel like a lot of the, how do you do it? How do you instill a culture? And then it's like, we're going to have a kickoff and that's going to be the culture. It is definitely years of little brick by brick, making sure that the data is there, and that when people kind of want to show that they're ready for the next stage, it's not just taking their word for it, but it's like, we've seen it. We know how that works for the benefit of the business. And it's not just you've been here long enough entitlement. It is something that you earn, and you find that very meaningful. So I think that when I look back at, I think we probably had, of the 250 people who are here today, we've probably hired about 400. So over time, and attrition rate is under 20%, so it's lower than normal in software companies. So you think there's something good there, and then the people who stay really are culture carriers, and then the processes that we put together are intended to make sure that you are seen and the good things are amplified so that we can handle the challenges that inevitably come up, like COVID or the market crash or whatever else happens, and we kind of have grit through it.
And back to my questions on the different geographies. So I don't know if I got the clear answer on that, but have you taken any specific measures to ensure that Ardoq culture remains the same across the different offices? And is that the goal in itself, to have the Ardoq culture be or every company or office be culturally assimilated in a way, or do you want differences?
There is no static culture. Every single human who joins another group will by definition change that culture. And so what we're trying to protect is, how do we, applaud the things that we really want? And that's not just salaries and promotions. Every Friday we do this really goofy wins session where no editing, no managerial oversight, just if you want to say something that was really cool, you helped somebody helped you, you just say it in a really with GIFs and memes and music and whatever else you want. So it's just we do some rituals to try to be this is what we're applauding along the way. But there's no we love this monolithic culture and everybody needs to conform. Because there are a lot of differences and every human brings new difference to it. And then what we're trying to what the commonality is forever is that we do want to be the kind of company where culture can lead us to doing the right things, not just bureaucratic, top-down oversight.
Makes sense. And one thing is different geographies and culture, but size-wise, you're now at 250, you joined at 20. Where in the growth journey have you seen most of the pain? When you're 20, you have full feel of the organization, you have water cooler discussions, you have a good control in a way, or control is maybe not the right word, but overview at least. So when do you remember in that journey that you had the most challenges?
So when I'm looking at my data dashboard here.
Yeah.
So when I joined in 2018, we were going from being 90% R&D to actually creating a commercial organization. And in 2018, we grew by over 260% on our headcount base. So in that very moment, right as I joined, was very much of a big bang. Let's actually try to attach a good commercial organization, an administration organization, to a really strong R&D base. And then so that's kind of insane. But then in 2020 and 2021, we then did 2 years of 60% growth in headcount base. And to do that at scale, we really had to have a lot of tight onboarding, making sure that we're constantly leveling up our expectation setting. And then culturally, we also do these, we have the Ardoq Way, which is a 2-day on-site here in Norway. Where we bring wherever you joined, you come to Norway and you get to kind of experience that original feeling of what we're trying to do, taking back something to the culture that you have in your local office. So yeah, those really hard years were when we didn't have the processes in place. We didn't have the expertise on the financial, HR, legal layers, IT layers, and we still had to do incredible growth. It's gotten easier as we know we're very much more predictable in how much we need to grow. And we have the expertise around the table with a lot of proof points that, what we're doing works instead of a lot of big unknowns.
Good point. At the moment now, what's on your table now? What are you struggling with as a COO at Ardoq at 250 people, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I think that it is very common themes across all businesses, but at this stage, there's always the need for more alignment. So you get a lot of very specialist, fully staffed functions, and then you want to make sure that whatever it is that we need to do, if we want to, we want to accelerate growth or we want to improve efficiency, whatever it is that the strategy is, we need to prove that we're working towards it in an aligned, focused way. And, so using OKRs, being really clear about our, business as usual, our committed processes, and also that there is a limit to everyone's capacity. So if they're already 90% spending their time on business as usual, what are we really going to do with that extra 10% that we can improve something, so that we don't get kind of too wide on the initiatives, knowing that if we're going to fix a few things at once, that's what we're going to focus on, and we kind of rally everybody to do that. So that takes more cycles of communication, more cycles of alignment than when you're 20 people. And then the good news for like what we're doing at Ardoq is that we have this incredible market position, the right kind of lighthouse customers in the biggest markets in the world, and we raised money right when it was easiest to raise money, where we don't have to raise money again before we're profitable. So it all comes down to execution. And, not every company needs a COO. The reason why Ardoq, with everything they need, why they wanted to have a COO was because you have a really, really sharp engineering, visionary CEO who's able to say, here's how we're going to move the whole market. We're not just going to play their game. We're going to move the market towards something that's better for the world. That strategy, having that direction is super critical. And then to have enough bandwidth to actually execute on a regular cadence is what then falls to the COO. And to do that with a really strong C-suite team, that's kind of what I think about all the time is like, it's incredible that we've gotten to this stage. We've made sure that we're maturing the team as the demands of us in the market are maturing, and we have an incredible team to tackle it. Now it's just about alignment because everybody knows a lot of the right things to do, but it's a bit about which order to do it in so that we can show the predictability.
And I assume throughout this journey, you've had several operating models and organizational structures. So what's been the drivers there? How frequently have you changed and adapted as an organization? It's an open question, but going from 20 to 250, I assume it's not been it has been some friction there, I assume, that you needed to fix.
Absolutely. And I should really underline that is that whatever the past looks like, it looks easy from here, but it is constant friction, constant doubt, constant uncertainty. And that's why if you're interested in that stuff, sign up for a scale up. But when I look back, it's about every 6 months that you start to see, because you see different parts of the organization maturing at different paces. And you want to be like, all right, well then if that one has matured this far, but the whole company is going to work unless we mature this one. And what's the core issue? Why was that one not maturing? Well, we kind of have too many layers, or there's silos, there's, whatever else it is. And then making sure that you get a strong view from executives on how to do it. You explain the why to the rest of the organization. You really try to make those moments of change that it's hard for everybody, but we know how important it is. And so we do put the extra effort into it. And then, so like one of the changes that we made recently or in the last year, was that we really wanted to have one synced up revenue process where we have recurring revenue. Fantastic. We have, some that it's easier to kind of get month by month subscriptions versus year by year or 3 year at a time subscriptions. We want to have one mind being like, let's tweak towards the 3 year stuff instead of the 1 month stuff. And basically saying this is better for the whole organization instead of kind of what you originally pitched. And then when, after you make a sale, then the opportunity for upsells and customer success and making sure that we're taking care all of that is about serving this total revenue package. So for the first time, we created the chief revenue officer role a year ago. And so I have had that bringing together that whole motion so that it's not about how we want to do things internally, but making sure we're meeting what the market wants really well. That was a big recent one. And then every step of the way, from the R&D side with engineering and product, it's a lot about having cross-functional teams. So you have to have the standard hierarchy so everyone has a direct manager and you can have that core, support that you need. But then you have to have these cross-functional teams where you have a back end, a front end, a product designer, a product manager, a QA, a subject matter expert, all working on the same problem all the time.
Makes sense. I see you that we're closing in on time, Nick, but if you don't mind, just one last question. So what's your advice to the next generation COOs building world-leading companies?
It's great to listen to the other stories, and that's why I like to do podcasts like this, but it is not a roadmap. If you can take away something about mentality, the grit and the unknowns that you will face, and that the fun part about it is that your story is going to be a very unique story in itself. And so sometimes you're going to want to choose to follow a playbook because it's not that important. It's not what makes you different. And sometimes you got to try some crazy gut calls. And I think that that's a bit of the story where starting the company was a crazy gut call, making sure that we went into an industry that was already established, even though it didn't quite fit with enterprise architecture. The call to go to the United States, those are the gut calls that you really kind of live or die on the story about. And so far, we've done enough of the right gut calls that we can continue to grow and bring value to the world.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nick. Great closing words. Thank you for joining the ramp.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe. We're coming out with a new episode every single month.